I'm running like a chicken. I got here early, and I'm still running just a smidge behind. It'll be all right. No. I've been trying to, as you can tell, I've got the room darkened so that hopefully, if I can get through this part of the lesson leading up, I'm going to try to give you just a little 5-minute video, 5.5-minute video about Petra, just to try to help bring to life what we've been talking about as far as trying to introduce you to what Petra is. Those of you that don't know, never have seen or anything like that, just try to help make it a little bit more interesting for us. So that hopefully that'll be, last few minutes of the class this morning. Just why my truck blanket is hanging over the window. So, yeah, that's my new one. Yes, sir.
We used to put veggie blankets over our windows to make.
You're in trouble now, Bubba. Yeah. So.
Good luck.
So anyway, okay. So now we're the creation invasion. Remember that's coming soon. Hopefully, we'll start finding out more details about this in the next week or so, since it's like 3 weeks away from yesterday. So hopefully we'll get that information upstairs this morning, or a little bit more of that information this morning. So still in our study, the Transcending Vision of Obadiah. So we're in the book of Obadiah. We have made it through learning a little bit about Obadiah, who Esau was, who Jacob was. We're into the 6 attributes of this vision, the meanings behind the vision. We've already talked about verse 1, how troubling a vision it was, and just the things that which God had ought against Edom and the nation of Edom and everything else. And then the last 2 weeks we've been talking about it's a targeted vision. So today we've made it to verse 4. I'm sorry, we're in verse 4. Dealing with the purpose. We'll read that this morning. It says, we'll just read all 4 verses. Verse number 1 says, the vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord God concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Get that out of my way. Thou art greatly despised. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, and saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Verse number 4, the one we want to look at today. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. And today we're wanting to talk about the purpose of behind this verse, behind what the Lord is telling Obadiah, and Obadiah is relating to us here in this vision. The purpose of this targeted vision gets some much needed light shined on it in this verse, because as we see, it says, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle. Now, if we all should know a little bit about the eagle, since the bald eagle is our country's national bird. And we hold that bird in high regard. I mean, so high that even if you was to find just a feather from one out in the woods, out in the wilderness somewhere, and you kept that and didn't turn it in to the proper authorities, and somebody was to find out, you can go to jail for a long time for keeping a feather. Yes, of the bald. No, that is God's honest truth. That is, if it's a bald eagle, even a feather, a claw that it may shed. Because as we know, eagles go through a thing called molting, I think is molting. I knew it was one of those words. But it's where they will, over time, they will shed their feathers and they will shed their beak, even shed their beak and everything else. And if you was to find any of this stuff and keep it, you're in a lot of trouble if the right person was to find out and tell on you. Because, I mean, so much so, and I didn't know this. This guy that works over at UT in the hospital, in the kitchen that I deal with when we deliver over there, he knows all kinds of just weird facts. Super nice guy, but he was telling me that that if you was to, like I said, if you found just a single feather, you have to. It's your responsibility to turn it in to the government, to the proper officials, which would be wildlife, and then they send it to a special place in Arizona, where it is cataloged and kept up with and everything else, because when some of the Native Americans who use in their belief system, they will use these items, they can get these items for their ceremonial, whatever their technical name for it is. And that's why it's important, and that's why it's against the law to have just a feather, even a claw, or if you was to run across the beak. That's why you don't kill a bald eagle. There's not a whole lot of them in existence. That's why Dollywood has the reserve over here, and that's why when the one that died a year or so ago, it probably got packaged and sent to Arizona so that the Native Americans, when they need to do some type of whatever ritual or whatever it is that they do, they have the proper things to be able to carry that out. So, like I said, as we understand the eagle and we understand how the eagle protects itself and just the strength and everything else that this little bird, I mean, now when a fully grown eagle has its wings spread out, we're talking a wingspan of 6+ feet sometimes, from tip to wing to tip to wing. But when it is compact, it's tiny. It's a small bird, but it's a very predatory bird. It's a very strong bird and everything else, and it just kind of represents the what's the word I'd be looking for here? The persona, of the United States. That's I guess why we chose that as our national bird. I don't know.
Over the turkey.
Yeah, over the turkey. So, like I said, it just kind of comes down to that. And when we understand all the things about an eagle, and I wished I took the time to study a little bit more about the eagle, but I didn't. And that's on me. But like I said, the eagle, when they build their nest way up high somewhere where they can't, where predators can't get to them. They're just way up high, in a cliff somewhere, or way up high in a tree on a high peak or whatever. That's where they build their nest, and that's what Edom did. That's the people that built Petra. That was the thought process behind why they chose this spot. And in the video, I hope to show you here in a little bit, you kind of get a little bit of an idea. And there's several other videos. If you was to go home and just search YouTube, for Petra and Jordan, you'll see a lot of different, people's take on Petra, and you can see the sick that you have to go through to get to this beautiful place. But it is high. It's in a desert mountain range. It's in a place to where people are. It's hard to get to, just like the eagle. That's why the symbolism is there, and that's why God's using the eagle when it's talking about the city of Petra and under the reign of Edom. Now, in the video, you're going to hear a lot of talk about a Nevian people and everything else. And as we know, when back in the Bible days, when a territory or a city or whatever was conquered, then the conquering people would then assume and take over ownership of this particular territory or city. And the Nevians were one of the ones that started it. Then Edom came in and conquered them and took it, and then was under control of that city for quite a while. And then different things transpired, the fall of Edom and the fall of Petra and all that stuff. And now it's just a vacant, desolate city of ruins, but yet beautiful ruins. And when we kind of understand, if you really sit down and start studying out a little bit about Petra, you'll see just how innovative of city it was for its time and everything else and so forth. So, like I said, the purpose of this verse, when we dig a little deeper in this verse, we see the warning of impending judgment to those who choose to rise up against Israel. It's easy when you have the military paralysis and the place that they had to retreat and fall back to kind of eliminate the purpose or the retaliation. It was a very intimidating place for people that were looking to come into this city because of just how difficult it was to get to, and everything else. So it was easy for them, as the nation of Edom, who were people who would can help control trade routes and different things like that at the time, and they would control the city, and then they would even take their military might and use it against their own flesh and blood and everything else. And that's kind of why why God has this purpose, as he's talking about. I mean, when you read this, you're seeing, man, we understand the eagle, they build their nest way up high. It's hard to get to and difficult, and we know that in warfare you always want to be at the you always want to defend the highest part, because those coming up to this wherever you're at and you're defending, it's easier to defend people coming up because they've got the terrain of the land, they've got everything else, but it makes it easy for you defending this city to withstand the threat against it. So you always in warfare, you always want to try to have the highest part, to be up high to where you could defend your city, and that's what the nation of Edom did. That's why they chose this place, and they used it and everything else. And then we see, he's talking about just up the stars. Thou set thy nest among the stars, and that's talking about just how far away from anything and everything the eagle builds its nest, and they're the only ones that can get to that nest, and they defend that nest and everything else. And that's the way the nation of Edom did. And then the Lord says, "Thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord." And then we see, God had a plan. God had a purpose. And that purpose for giving this illustration or this verse in the Bible is to tell us that, hey, it doesn't matter how well you think you have set yourself up to be able to easily defend yourself against anything that may come up against you, that there's always somebody that could always come in and take you down. It's sort of like if you really did study a lot of history, and that was one of the things that I enjoyed in school, one of the only things that I enjoyed in school, to put a little more emphasis on that. You see the way that how emperors and different things throughout time kept a guard, kept close. If they were threatened or felt threatened in any way, they would take out that threat. One, it would be intentional. That's what God's doing. One is intentional, and two, it's because of. And that's the two things that if we drill down into this verse, we see that is the purpose to which God gives this verse and this warning in this vision, because he's trying to paint the picture and drive it home. So let's look at one possibility, one possible explanation for the purpose: something being done intentionally. The reason for this is to give an advanced warning to those, to others. When God sets down in His Word and tells people that if you come up against my people, if you come up against the nation of Israel, I'm going to handle it. God sent, a lot of times God would, there was a time when David would go in, and when he was fighting, when he was still trying to make his way into the kingship before Saul died and everything else. And there was the time, the pastor brought a message on it several months ago when he was dealing with his There Is study and on Sunday mornings, and he was talking about Ziklag. There was, when the Ziklag was overtaken and everything was taken away, and David and his men, mighty men, came back to camp, and they seen that everything was gone. David went to the Lord and said, shall I go after? And the Lord said, yes, go recover all. And that's interesting that he would say recover all, because it was not the custom in warfare back in those days to not have any casualties. Usually there would at least be loss of animals, or even, God forbid, a mother get killed or a child get killed while the invasion is taking place and so forth, especially when there's, when all the mighty men are going out to battle. There's the elderly men and stuff like that that's not going to be able to withstand an advancement of a highly trained army coming in to take them and everything else. And usually there would be some loss of life, but when God tells David to go recover all, nobody lost their life, nothing, and David was able to recover all and bring back everything that was taken. And then we see there was another time, and I'm not for sure, I can't remember right now, right off the top of my head, exactly who this was, but there was a time when they were the nation of Israel was going into battle, and they inquired upon the Lord, shall we go take it? And the Lord said, no. Here's what I want you to do. And he sent him, it might have been Gideon, I don't know, I think it was. He said, no, you're not to take him, for I have this battle. I have this is my fight. And God fought the battle for the nation of Israel at that time. And basically all he did was he put 100 here, 100 here, and 100 here against this vast army that had rose up against them. And they had, when, that was one. And then there was another one when they were under the trees and the Spirit of the Lord came across the top, and just many different, and I'm getting all of these mixed up because I'm in a hurry. But he comes, God would fight a lot of the battles for the nation of Israel, and he would take care of different things. And he was very intentional in doing that. And the Lord is very intentional when it comes to protecting his people. He's going to stand up for his people. He's either A, going to do it for them, or B, he's going to give them the ability to stand up against their foe and to fight and battle and win that battle. I mean, there's a reason that since the beginning of time, when over in the Middle East, there's a reason that the nation of Israel is still there, and it's all because of God. That's God's chosen people. He's not going to allow anything to happen. So that's the intentional part. God's going to be very intentional, and just as he was to Edom, when Edom rose up against his people and everything else, and took advantage of them, and did the things that they had done, to them, not letting them cross their land when they were fleeing from here or there, and different things, and then even joining in with in a foreign battle and coming in and fighting their own flesh and blood. Because you got to remember, Edom was Israel's kin. This is family fighting family, much like the Civil War in the United States. Different sides of the families was fighting each other, brother against brother, and cousin against cousin, just depending on what side of the Mason-Dixon line that you may have lived on, or what side of who you thought was right. It didn't matter. That is going to happen. That happens, and that's what happened here between Esau and Jacob. Esau, as we know, is the nation of Edom. Jacob, whose name was later changed to Israel, was the one that helped bring the nation of Israel into existence. So as we see, and then the because of. So that's kind of how God's going to fight this battle, and he's coming in and he's taking care of his people, the nation of Israel. Then there's the because of. The other possible explanation for this purpose is the because of. And what do I mean by that? Because a nation might rise up and try to overthrow the nation of Israel, God will protect his people and bring destruction to that nation. This should serve as a warning for any future nations not to rise up against Israel, threaten Israel, or be unfriendly to Israel. And that's important because as we've talked about in a couple of weeks ago and different things, the one thing that I'm just trying to really drive home in this process, in this study, is the fact that when it comes to the nation of Israel, the best place that we as a country, and whether you realize it or not, the majority of you in here are the future of this country. I'm sorry. You are the future of this country. And the decisions that a lot of you will make later on in your life, as the Lord wills, will depend on the success and the failure of this nation. That's just the way it is. We've had a lot of people that's come through school, and as you know, a lot of people have come through school in the last 10 or 15, 20 years that have not, especially when it got to, 19, 20, 21, when all this about going in and taking down all the different statues and reminders that we had put up, erected from the past to help us remember where we came from. If you notice, that is a thing that the nation of Israel was charged to do throughout when they come through the Red Sea. God told them what? Establish a remembrance, a memorial, so that when future generations come to you and say, Dad, what's this for? You can tell them that's when God brought the nation of Israel out of Egypt and across the Red Sea, and the mighty work that God did and everything else. And in that story was handed down generation after generation after generation. The reason we erected the memorials in which we had in this country was to help remind us of where we were, what was going on at this specific time, and then to see how far we've come since this time back here. When this is done away with, history becomes suggestive. It's not fact. History is fact, just like math, unfortunately. History is fact. It happened or it didn't. It can be proven, and the reason that we've seen in the last few years in this country, the memorials of different times gone by, pulled down, and different things, whether it be slavery. I know we live in a state here that was torn between the North and the South, and everything else. And states below us were really, really, really big into the Confederacy and everything else. And the reason we had those monuments set up was not to lord over somebody else, but it was a reminder of where this nation was, and to see how far we've come. With that gone, we are a nation, we are a people, we are a society today that is news cycle to news cycle. We have forgotten our past. We have forgotten where we've came from. And that's why when a couple of weeks ago when we was talking about FDR and everything else, when Truman's mother rang through in his head, always be kind to the Jew. That's why he was the first one to step up to the plate and announce that he was backing 100% with this country, the Israeli state in Israel, and how we've seen God bless this nation. And now we have a government system set up right now who's seeking to turn its back on the nation of Israel and doom us all. And why is that? Because we forgot our history. We forgot where we came from and everything else. And that's why I'm hoping to drive this home, because when it comes to, and you want to, I can prove it. Genesis 12:3. It says, the Lord says, and I will bless them that bless thee, talking to Abraham. He said, I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth, what? Be blessed. We are blessed today because generations that have died and gone before us stood with the nation of Israel. We have been blessed because of that. Nations have been blessed because they stood with Israel. And the covenant that God made and is in the process of making here in Genesis 12:3 with Abraham. We have been blessed, and it would behoove us to not forget our past. That's why we still have the Old Testament. You have a lot of churches today, all they want to focus on is the New Testament. You've got a few churches out there, all they want to look at is the Old Testament. We look at both. We have them both. We need to know where we came from. We need to see what God has done in the past. But then we also need to see how He's talking about and directing us in the future. And we can be directed in the future by where we've come from in the past. And by the fact that our education system here in this country is denying everything in the past and not teaching real history anymore, and only teaching that which they want you to know so that it's easier to manipulate your minds. Because they don't want you to know that as a Christian, or just as a nation, it doesn't have to be Christian. If you stand with the Jew, you're going to be blessed by God. If you rise up against the Jew, you're going to be in judgment of God and everything else. So that's that. Next week we'll jump into the plan. Go ahead and turn that off because I don't want to